Hi everyone. This video is a book review about a book that I just recently bought, maybe a month or two ago. And the title of this book is Mantras, Words of Power, and it was written by Swami Radha. Now, I read this book while I was on my break. I didn't want to read anything that was too long or too daunting. I just wanted to relax and read something that had some type of depth but was relatively short. And I think this book was a good read for that. I had it on my thrift books book list for, I guess, several months before I actually bought it. I used to have another book on mantras that I have to rebuy, but I decided to get this one instead just to see if I could learn anything more about it. I've been working with mantras, I believe, since between 2011 and 2013, somewhere around that time. I was introduced to mantras by my old best friend. She started off teaching me like seed sound mantras, like shreem and kleem and different things. But I'm going to share with you some of the things that I learned in here and just some information about how you can start chanting mantras and how you can become a better chanter. But before I get into all of that, let us learn more about the author. So the author is Swami Radha. And she lived from 1911 to 1995. So she died, I'm going to say November 30th, 1995. And she was born March 20th. She was born in Berlin, Germany. Now, if I'm correct. Now, I did not know that the author of this book was a woman until I looked in the back of the book. But I'm sure it would have given me a clue because it has Radha at the last name. Radha is like a goddess of love. But anyway, Swami Radha is regarded as one of the most profound and practical spiritual leaders of the 20th century. Born in Germany, Swami Radha moved to Canada after World War II and traveled to India in the mid-1950s to meet her spiritual teacher, Swami Sivananda. Initiated into sannyas in 1956, she then returned to Canada and spent the next 40 years committed to teaching yoga and translating Eastern wisdom for the West. Her knowledge of mantra is based on in-depth study and personal practice to which she dedicated herself. She wrote Mantras, Words of Power in 1980, and this is the book's third edition. Swami Radha is the author of over 10 books on yoga philosophy and the founder of Yasodhara Ashram, Ascent magazine, and a number of Radha yoga centers in North America and Europe. Her work continues in the spirit in which it was created, with the quality and integrity that were the essence of her life. So I thought that was pretty interesting, that it was maybe a Westerner, I guess. Would she be counted as a Westerner? A Westerner that goes into a culture that is not her own and takes on the belief system of another culture and immerses herself into it and gradually decides to spread it throughout the world. Now, in some cases, when I read about authors or people like that, I'm like, I don't know. I don't really know what to think because it really all depends on like what they did while they were alive, what their work was. Sometimes you have those who have a heart of humility, and sometimes you have those who just do it on a base level. This actually kind of reminded me of Malidoma Patrice Somé, and him, the author of Water and the Spirit and the Healing Wisdom of Africa. He was an African shaman, and he opened up his people's belief system and brought it to the West. So she kind of became like a bridge or some type of mediator between two cultures, which I think was pretty interesting. If you go to the ashram's website, they have a 3-part video series that talks about her life. It's very informative, and they have it on YouTube, so you can look in the description box below for the links to those videos if you want to learn a little bit more about her. So, let us start. It says, a word from the author. She says, I knew nothing of mantra before I went to India to meet Swami Sivananda Saraswati. As a child growing up in Germany, I had many out-of-the-ordinary experiences and perceptions, and although I did not know enough to think of it that way, I used to sit in meditation, deep in thought, looking at one spot. My mother tried to discourage these strange ways and interest me in doing the things young girls usually do. So this wasn't something that I guess she picked up as an adult. This was something that was already inside her, and I guess the universe just led her on that natural path of finding out exactly what to call it and exactly what to do with it. So, for example, I noticed that some people who are very into rituals, if they don't go into, let's say, the occult, they might just naturally gravitate towards Catholicism. I noticed that because Catholicism has a lot of rituals and different things, and taking your mind to a different state of being. When I went to India in 1955, I heard about mantras and the marvelous power they have, but I was Western and very skeptical. I asked my guru what good repeating the same words over and over would do. He replied that I would have to practice chanting mantra and find out. Through my practice of mantra and in keeping notes, I would record most of the time when I reached impasses, as I called them, times when I just did not know why I was doing this practice. I recognized the rebellion of my mind. It complained about carrying on something that seemed useless to it, but I continued 5 hours a day, 7 days a week, for 7 weeks. Swami Sivananda told me that I should intersperse the chanting with worship. When I said that I came from a Protestant religion and had no interest in ritual, he suggested something simple and beautiful, that I grow flowers of different colors and place them on an altar when I chanted. He said that I should always designate the same spot in my house as a holy place, and when I place white flowers there, by the law of thought association, they would put me in touch with the spirit that is expressed in the symbol of Lord Shiva. So yes, this is just the beginning of her journey. I guess in the beginning she really didn't realize how far she would go. She was only thinking with the mind of a student. But when you have a mantra over the course of time, it does make you wiser. It does make you begin to feel more powerful within yourself. She says, back in Canada, I did not feel strong in my spiritual practice. My concentration was on teeter-totter. He gave her an image to look at. Okay. She said, when I chanted my mantra, I used a box of matches and my mala with 108 beads. Every time I finished one mala, I would throw one match on the ground. When I had finished 10 malas, I thought, well, I had done 80 extra mantras. What shall I do with them? I decided to make it 1100 simply to overcome the resistance of my mind. So she just goes on and talking about her experience. Let's see. We're going to move on to chapter 1, which is what is mantra. It says a mantra is a combination of sacred syllables that forms a nucleus of spiritual energy. This serves as a magnet to attract or a lens to focus spiritual vibrations. According to the, I don't know if it's Upanishads, the ancient scriptures of India, the original abode of the mantra was Parma Akasha, or primeval ether, the eternal and immutable substratum of the universe, out of which, in the uttering of the primal sound Vach, the universe itself was created. A similar account is found in the Gospel of St. John. In the beginning was the Word. The mantras existed within this ether and were directly perceived by ancient rishis, or seers, who translated them into an audible pattern of words, rhythm, and melody. When I first started mantras, I did not know that different groups had different mantras. That's how little I knew about mantras. I really didn't know. I just knew the Sanskrit mantras that I was taught. Just the simple one-syllable Sanskrit mantras. I didn't know that there were ones that were very, very long until I started doing more research. I didn't know that there was Kabbalistic mantras until my old best friend was talking about like the 72 names of God. So I ended up finding a sheet online with all of the 72 names. And I started practicing those, and those were very, very powerful. So since I've learned about mantras, I have incorporated them into my life just to get things coming towards me, to get things to get away from me. Some mantras, I had to figure out what was going on. There's really 3 mantras that kind of like, I'm not going to say they get on my nerves, but they kind of freak me out a little bit. One is the mantra Klim, K-L-I-M. It's a seed sound of attraction. I don't think it's masculine or feminine. And you can add it to any, I guess, mantra. Let's say you had a Lakshmi mantra. You could add Klim to attract the qualities of that mantra to you. So I was using it for relationships and bringing love towards me. And what ended up happening was all of these dudes that I didn't want to see or didn't want to talk to just started coming up to me, or exes started coming around. And it wasn't like, oh, I see an ex this week, I see an ex 3 weeks from now. No, it was like back to back. I started getting emails. I started just getting DMs. Like, I was like, what is going on? And fortunately, somebody said that the reason I was getting all of this is because it was clearing my relationship karma. Another thing that was really odd about Klim is every time I would chant it, I would start making sales on my art. Like, I would get a sale on my website, or I'd get a sale on my Zazzle store, or somebody would want me to do something related to art. But that's because I loved my career. And so Klim will attract whatever you love. I love love, and I love money. And that's what it attracted. The other one was Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, which I want to say is Behold the Jewel in the Lotus, but don't quote me on that. I can't handle that mantra, because every time I would chant it, something crazy would happen. It'd be like an upheaval of something which probably needed to be upheavaled. And things would just happen very, very, very fast. So I was like, I'm only going to chant this when I'm prepared. And the next one was He Zion Yod. I think that's how it was. Calling the angelic forces with the Kabbalah. What I noticed about that one was if I was chanting it very intently and intensely, it would start to rain. And the more I chanted it, the more it would rain. I don't know why. I had chanted it with somebody else, and for 4 days it stormed, and on the 4th day, 4 people got struck by lightning. Like, I was just like, you know what? I'm done. I'm good. I'll only call these angelic forces whenever I need them. So mantras are very powerful. I personally feel they can change your physiology, but that's just over the course of time. Because the mantra becomes a part of you. Mantra is not prayer. Prayer consists of words of supplication chosen by the spiritual aspirant, whereas mantra is a precise combination of words and sounds, the embodiment of a particular form of consciousness, or I guess it's Shakti. I don't know. I disagree. I think mantra can be a prayer. Even though she defines it as that, I feel like it's a prayer. I've seen others treat it like a prayer. So even though technically it's not a prayer, I believe it is a prayer. The root word man or man in the word mantra means in Sanskrit to think. Tra comes from trai, is it trai? T-R-A-I, meaning to protect or free from the bondage of samsara or the phenomenal world. Therefore, mantra means the thought that liberates and protects. But there are many levels of meaning in a mantra that must be experienced to be truly understood. An intellectual explanation encompasses only a small part of its meaning. The chanting or recitation of mantras activates and accelerates the creative spiritual force, promoting harmony in all parts of the human being. Whenever I was chanting mantras, I could tell the difference in my physical body when I did chant and when I didn't chant. It was like the more I chanted, the more, I don't know what appropriate word to use, so I'm just going to say full, because that's how I felt. I felt complete. If I didn't chant or I wasn't chanting for a long time, I felt like something was missing. I just felt like nothing was moving. Whereas when I did chant, I could feel movement, whether it was physical movement in my life, like I could feel like physical movement in my body, I felt whole, or just seeing progress in my life. Every mantra has 6 aspects: a rishi or seer, a raga or melody, the devata or presiding deity, a bija or seed sound, the shakti or power. I guess it's sakti, but I've always said shakti, but it's S-A-K-T-I or power, and a kilaka or pillar. Now, shakti, I feel like that's the feminine energy, or at least from what I've read about it. There was a book called Shakti Mantras, and it was basically by Thomas Ashley Farrand, and it talks about the goddesses and their mantras and the Shakti energy. If the mantra is the car, the Shakti energy is the fuel of the car. It doesn't go anywhere without that energy. It's like a feminine energy or of sorts. And the author goes into detail about each aspect of the mantra. It's very long. It says, one thing that really stood out to me though was the raga. When chanting a mantra, It is extremely important not to change the raga and its key, because the rate of vibrations on which the sound is based is an integral part of the mantra. All Indian music is based on the understanding that there are two aspects to every sound, the audible expression and the subtle sound essence that carries the meaning and arises from the eternal spirit. This essence is called sabda or vach. I don't know if it's vach or vach. V-A-C-H. When the spoken word is perfectly sounded within and without, contact is made with this power, which manifests as an image. One thing that I was always curious about is if you're not in contact with the guru, because a lot of mantras are given by gurus, and the proper way to say them, how do you know you're using the right tone? How do you know? Do you have to be initiated? And I'm asking this because I'm still learning. I'm not an expert at all by any means. I'm just like, have I been chanting my mantras in the proper tone? Or at the end of the day, if you don't have access, is it just your desire and your humility that gets the message through? Everybody had to learn from somebody over the course of time. Maybe if you practice enough, perhaps the sound will be revealed to you in a vision or a dream. I don't know. But how do we know we're saying it in the right tone? How do we know we're doing it correctly? Each mantra has a bija or seed sound. This is the essence of the mantra, and it gives the mantra its special power, its self-generating power. Just as within a seed is hidden a tree, so the energy in the mantra is the seed from which will grow a beautiful spiritual being. If you were to chant quite regularly now, abandon the practice, and then perhaps 20 years from now, suddenly find yourself in some crisis, the mantra might automatically come to your lips, and you would continue to repeat it as if you had never ceased. This is an example of its self-generating power. I noticed that when I was chanting mantras, and I didn't chant them for a while, it would still be working. It's almost like the Psalms. Like, I could do a little and I did enough, and then now it's just self-generating itself. And I'm floating off of the residuals of its power, if that makes any sense. And after a while, I felt like I didn't have to chant it as much because it had already become seated within me. So, for example, my friend who moved to Hawaii, he goes like back and forth. He chanted the Ganesha Mantra. He chanted the Ganesha Mantra so much, all of his obstacles were removed. And whenever I would chant the Ganesha Mantra, he would just appear out of nowhere. Like he would call or he would show up somewhere because that's who he had become. There's also another deity. I don't know if he's a deity or if he was a human. It was Lord Kubera. And Lord Kubera is considered the banker of heaven. And he chanted seed sounds over the course of many, 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 many years. Let us see. Also, if you don't feel like chanting extremely long mantras, because there are mantras that are very long. There was one mantra that was she of 1,000 names or something like that. It's like 1,000 names of the goddess. It takes like 20 minutes to chant that stuff. The Gayatri Mantra. There's a long form and a short form. Some of these mantras have long forms and some of them have short forms, from what I've researched. You could chant Lakshmi's mantra. You could like Om Shrim Maha Lakshmi Swaha. Or you could just say Shrim. You might not want to do a whole sentence. You might want to say Om Gam Ganapate Namaha, or you could just say Gom. Or you could say cream. instead of Kali's full mantra or Hreem. Just all seed sounds. Let's see. Let's go to another chapter so it's not too long. Let's see the benefits of using mantra. The repetition of a mantra is a means of improving the powers of concentration. There are Indian spiritual masters who maintain that the meaning and the content of the mantra do not necessarily have to be understood by the aspirant in order to bring about the desired effect. That the practice of mantra alone is sufficient to achieve the spiritual awakening which is its purpose. The benefits of mantra practice depend on you as an individual, on where you started off, where you stand now, what your past lives have been, and the intensity and degree of longing in your desire. When you chant a mantra, your whole being changes for the better. Build up the habit of repeating the mantra at all times. The work you do will become easier and more joyful because the mantra is continuously in the back of your mind. I remember when I was chanting Saraswati's mantra, and I was just doing it for the arts, and I got so many ideas for paintings. I was like, oh, this is fun. Another thing that also increased romance or something, like, I don't know if it was romance or showmance, I really don't know, in my life, besides the mantra Kleem, were two soulmate mantras. One was Kabbalistic, and I think it's Shin Aleph He, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I may be mispronouncing it, but that one of the interpretations is soulmate, and the other one is Sat Patim Dehi Parameshwara, which is for a woman to find a spiritual man of truth, like a husband or a divine consort. So I noticed when I was chanting those, I did get men coming towards me, but they weren't like the usual men that bothered me. They were like of a higher quality man. So when you chant these mantras, just keep track of what happens. Like, do you suddenly get money? Like, does somebody react in a certain way? You'll start to see it. There was one time I was chanting 13 mantras for 9 months every single day. Like, I was chanting so hard and so heavy. And on my birthday, I went to my old best friend's apartment, and she said, have you been chanting mantras? And I'm like, yeah, why? She's like, have you been chanting Sanskrit mantras? I was like, yeah, how did you know? She's like, you just look really Indian right now. And what was weird was, around that time, that's all people were mistaking me for. Like, are you Indian? Are you Indian? I'm like, y'all, like, no Indians ever mistook me for Indian. Like, why do you keep thinking I'm Indian? But it was because I was chanting so many Lakshmi mantras, like, so hard, that I feel that they did not see me. They saw the essence of Lakshmi in me. So instead of seeing my face, they might have seen her face. Around that time, I did have a dream where I was wandering, and there was this girl in my dream. She was, okay, hold on. I'm getting ahead of myself. So in my dream, I was walking. I was asking myself questions. I don't know what questions I was asking myself. I was by a building, and it was a black building. Like, all of the glass was black. Now that I'm awake and can interpret the dream, I think the building was a black scrying mirror. Like a black scrying mirror. And there was a girl, and she was darker than me. She must have been like 2 to 3 shades darker than me. And she was small. She almost looked like a fairy, but she was so beautiful. I couldn't stop staring at her. I could not stop staring at this girl in my dream. And that's when I realized, I was like, oh, it's Lakshmi. And I said, you're so beautiful. No, she said, I'm beautiful, aren't I? And I'm like, yeah, you are beautiful. She's like, well, you're beautiful too. And I said, really? So when I looked in the black mirror, I looked like myself, but I looked like 15 million times more beautiful. I was like, whoa, and I woke up. So I interpret that dream is the more you work with these mantras, the more its energy comes out through you. It'll even change like your physical appearance. Personally, I believe it can alter your physical appearance. You might not see it yourself, but the world will perceive you as the essence of that mantra. One of the results that comes quickly with the practice of mantra is control of the breath, which is by the means by which we can develop the ability to control the emotions. In chanting, we can give all our emotions to the mantra, to the deity of the mantra, and ask that deity to help us gain control. In this way, we find a safe release for negative feelings. Mantra practice stills turbulent emotions and thereby stills the turbulent mind. As the mantra is put into the subconscious, the mind is purified to the extent of which we would be incapable without this aid. Slowly, the ego is overpowered by the higher self. It is like pouring milk into a cup of black coffee until, little by little, the coffee is replaced by pure milk. Because it purifies the mind, the mantra is also a great protection from fear. I mentioned this story before. I had somebody a couple of years ago snatch my phone out of my hand on the bus, and he took off running with my phone. I chased him. It was over by Del Mar Loop Station. So I lost track of him, and I used mantras to bring him back. I used the Ganesha Mantra to remove obstacles, and I used the mantra, I don't know what it was, but it was from the Kabbalah, and it was lost and found. And my goal was to get him to come to the exact spot of the theft. And after I was done chanting, I stood up and I looked, and he was walking off the train. When I say these mantras are powerful, and if you have a mind that is focused, you incorporate the breathing, you will do dynamic wonders. Me, I haven't done the breathing yet. I'm still learning about breathing. I'm still an amateur with mantras. They work for me because I believe in them, but I'm pretty sure there's much more I have to do in order to create do it properly, according to the ways of this culture or this belief system. The voice can become an instrument for expressing and controlling the emotions. Even if you cannot reach the high notes in the beginning, you will find as you continue to practice that your range will expand. You will notice the breath flowing evenly and the voice becoming smooth. You will also begin to hear the expression of emotions, anger, disappointment, joy in your voice. At times, your chanting may be caressing, gentle, intense, full of longing or surrender. If you chant softly, you may observe that your emotions become more gentle. They will become refined through the chanting and change into true feelings that are expressed in your heart. Then she goes on talking about the ego and different things. Then she has a chapter on how to use the mantra. But I don't want to go into all of the mantras. I'm just going to focus on this last chapter, and we're going to end. So if you want to learn more, you can, either borrow the book from the library or buy it online. Chapter 7 is about individual mantras, and she has pictures in the book too. The mantras presented in the first section of this chapter are mantras of the heart, used as short formulas to bring about the single pointedness of mind for the purpose of achieving self-realization. So the first one that she has is Om. Om. The cosmic sound Om, or its condensed form, Om, is the origin of all other sounds and is itself a mantra. It is called the pranava, or sacred syllable, and symbolizes Brahman, or the essential spiritual reality. The mantra Om gives birth to rays of light, bringing illumination to the mind. All sounds are blended into the beautiful cosmic Om, which can reverberate in the hearts of men and women. Mantra is speech most profound, sound at its purest, and when that supreme sound of Om becomes sovereign, it takes you past the little selfish ego, so that you are clothed in a new cloth of thought and sound. So, it says, the flute of Lord Krishna is also symbolic for the pranava. By the sound of his flute, Krishna created the world, and with its sound, he calls his devotees back to their heavenly home. And she says that Om consists of 3 parts, with equal time given to each part. A is chanted in the region of the navel, O in the sternum, and in the throat. So I guess it's Om. I don't know if this 0 O is U or if it's O, but it looks like Om. Chant O or U and place the sound at the area of the sternum. See the petals of this lotus as red at the center and pink in the middle. So throughout this visualization of this mantra, you're imagining the lotus flower. And it says, listening to the sound of Lord Krishna's flute, all consciousness is submerged in the divine. Then she has some other mantras. One is Om Tara, and Tara means star. She's a goddess, a Buddhist goddess, and she's known as Tara. As the white Tara, she represents the highest intelligence of the Buddha, the all-knowing one. As the green Tara, she is the mother of compassion. There's Hari Om, and she has Ave Maria. Ave Maria, although not a mantra in the Indian tradition, has gained enormous power through the countless repetition of the Christians who have chanted it. Ave Maria is part of the much longer Hail Mary prayer, of which these 2 sounds are the essence. Now, as I said, it wasn't until after I learned some of the Sanskrit mantras that I learned there were other mantras out there, and that you could turn a word into a mantra if you gave it enough dedication and power and respect. And I think as a person that knows a lot of Christians, of course I wouldn't read this book because it would probably be against their religion, depending on which branch of Christianity. I take that back. It depends on which branch of Christianity. But I think it could get them into a mind of worship, even if they chanted like Jesus and they just focused on Jesus or Lord, or they just said a scripture over and over and over. I think it would have the same effect. Or they could say Ruach. I think it's Ruach, which is like Holy Spirit. I wanted to show you this book. Hold on 1 second. I thought about it when I was reading this book. This one is called Dictionary of Jewish Terms, A Guide to the Language of Judaism. And I think if you're going to chant a mantra in like any language, just get a dictionary of words from that language, so you can be able to fully understand the words of what you're chanting. Some words are just so beautiful, you can just say them over and over and over and over, and it'll still be powerful. It says, since the science of sound and breath control applies to any religion, Christians can chant Jesus Christ to the tune of Hari Om. Well, they're not going to do that. While Jews can use Adonai or Elohim. A Buddhist might choose one of the names of Lord Buddha, or you can chant the words Divine Mother, or use any of her 108 names, such as Radha, Lakshmi, or Saraswati. And what I really like about this chapter is she gives some musical notes, like how to. I hate it. Yeah, can you see this? You might be able to play it if you can see it. You can pause if you play instruments, because I don't know how to play the instruments. Let's see, this is another one. I can kind of see some of these. Let's try. Okay, we're going to see if I can play something. I'll try. So, 1, 2, 3. That's like Om Krishna Guru, but I don't know if I played that right. All of these other ones are kind of complicated. They're like, I don't know. But if you're an instrumentalist and you know how to play the piano or the guitar or whatever, you can incorporate your mantra and your instruments together, and I think it will make it that much more powerful. And I also need piano lessons. Oh, it's okay. Okay. So, before I go, I wanted to show you some of the malas that I have. The first mala I ever got was at this place called Karmic Corner, and it was on South Kings Highway. And Karmic Corner closed down. I don't think they exist anymore. So I was helping them move stuff out of their basement. I brought it up, and they said I could take whatever I wanted. And I had just started reading about, mantras and malas, and I didn't have a mala. So I ended up getting this mala. I think I have to restring it because I've had it, I don't even know how long I've had this. Maybe 10 years or less. But I've had this a long time and it's still holding up. It's, I want to say it's rosewood, but don't quote me on that. But it's still holding up. I really loved it. I used it for a very, very long time. The next one I got off Amazon, and I believe this one is an agate. No. This is either a red agate or it's carnelian. I want to say it's a carnelian, but don't quote me on that. It may be a red agate. I did have another one that was an electric blue agate, and I literally do not know where that mala is. That was one of my favorite malas, and I don't know where it went. This one, I just restrung maybe a week or two ago, but I've had it for maybe 10 years or less. This is made of freshwater pearl. I got it online from China. I want to say I got it off eBay. I'll probably have to restring it again because I put the guru bead in the wrong place. But if I do restring it, I think I might just make it just a full circle. Just a full one, and then, yeah, I don't know. But I really like that one. This is a rosary. I don't know how to chant on a rosary yet, but this is pretty. It looks like it's pearl. Somebody else made this, but I don't know who. Oh, there's another one I wanted to show you. And the final one is my very favorite mala of all of them. It's what I call my Chakra Mala. I have had this for a couple of years. It is still sturdy. It is still a sturdy mala. It has all of the chakra colors, and it has the guru bead too. I bought it from Pathways. I don't know if this is a carnelian or if this is a dyed agate. This one right here, don't know what that is. This may be citrine or a dyed agate. This may be aventurine, like green aventurine. This may be electric blue agate, lapis lazuli or sodalite, and amethyst. But this is my favorite mala of all time. I love it so much. I keep it in this prayer box right here when I'm not using it, just to keep it safe and protected. But yeah, I hope that you all enjoyed this video and that you'll go out and learn more about mantras, and that you'll purchase this book because it does go into nice detail about how to properly chant, just the proper way for everything. It's very informative, but it is not very long. So I give this 5 fudge buckets when I get a fudge bucket reward. And talk to you all later. Happy reading.